we were just talking about your slogan that says, if we don't fix global warming, we have to kiss our children's future goodbye. And we were discussing what the planet may end up looking like. And one thing I'd like to know is, sure, we're going to have a different environment around us, but civilization should continue, should it not?
Well, actually, quite on the contrary, I believe that we as a biological species will go if we do, which is likely, at least possible. And why civilization will go first? Because civilization, as we know it, is based on an oil economy as well as an oil technology. And oil is not inexhaustible, nor should oil be burned if available or if accessible, because if we do that, we certainly will be dooming ourselves to extinction, biologically even, if we have no self-control over that. But civilization will go first because unless we begin to develop a green technology that is big enough to be able to take over from fossil fuel technology or biofuel technology, unless it is big enough to be able to very rapidly take over from it, because even though oil seems to be on the rise today, the changes will be very abrupt at the end, because things are exponential today. The demand is going up exponentially, and the supply is dwindling exponentially. And the nature of the exponential curve is that all of a sudden it shoots almost vertical, or fall almost vertical. So when that happens, when oil becomes rare, or if it runs out, all economies will collapse. All transportation system will grind to a halt. Materials cannot be exchanged. There will be no fuel to run factories, no fuel to run to even heat your home. And so what's going to happen then? Civilization as we know it will collapse, because it is based on transportation, it is based on industry, it is based on manufacturing, it is based on investments, and so even without global warming, if we just keep on burning the oil until it becomes a rare commodity, and until at the same time the demand goes higher and higher and higher, all of a sudden the two curves will intersect, and when it does, it will be a point of no return, and it will the civilization based on oil will die if there is no technology to take over from it. So according to my thinking, the most important way that used to build the alternative technology system so that it can take over from the oil and have a smooth transition. Otherwise, it will be a huge disruption, to say the least, or total devastation. And this can also trigger a third world conflict, an oil grab for the last few barrels of oil. And this oil grab, of course, since oil cannot be moved, since the tar sand has to remain in Alberta, Canada. If the United States are desperate enough for the oil, I believe that it is not outside of the realms of possibility that the US may invade Canada and take over the tar sands. And if that happens, and if the country invaded has potent weapons, then then there will be a third world war, an oil war, a hot oil war. It is also said that the Third World War will be fought with biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons, and the Fourth World War will be fought with sticks and stones. And that means that civilization will have collapsed by then. Get smoke.
What?
Get smoke.
Okay. Yeah, so look at that smoke, it's so toxic. So tell me, would biofuels be a better choice, given how toxic that stuff looks?
Biofuels are actually a worse choice than fossil fuels because well, except for the tar sands, I have to say. But I think ethanol is worse than gasoline ecologically speaking, from the Middle East, because the Middle East oil extraction process is not all that dirty. It is pumped vertically, and it is usually done in a desert region. However, the tar sands is an exception to the rule. But the ecological impact of biofuel and ethanol is even worse than the tar sands, in my opinion, because it also directly assaults the environment in terms of, well, actually it's about the same, because if you want to develop the tar sands, you have to plow down all the forests on top of the tar sand, and that would be the boreal forest in northern to mid-Canada. And biofuels, of course, are usually grown in already established farms in North America, in the Midwest, in the breadbasket, corn and soy. But there's not enough arable land. Basically, there was no limit as to the amount of ethanol that we can put into people's gas tanks. Basically, the more ethanol, the more money you'll make, because if you sink money into ethanol, you can make big money because there's a big demand for it. Right now, the governments, based upon the supply situation, are driving for 5% of ethanol inclusion in gasoline, and Canada is trying to drive for 10% ethanol, because Canada believes that Canada can also grow its own soy. Unfortunately, the major consumer, the United States, cannot do that because they have already saturated all the arable land, other than the areas protected by the national parks and so on and so forth. And so in the USA, for example, since they have already saturated all the arable land, and if they still need more ethanol, they'll have to go to another place to get it. And the country with the most amount of what is called undeveloped potential arable land, or something similar to it, that it still has a large amount of. And guess what that means? That means the entire tropical rainforest, the Amazon, is undeveloped potential arable land. And in the Amazon today, if you overfly it in certain areas, it would be like a patchwork of huge plantations of soy, of sugarcane, and in Indonesia particularly, it would be oil palm, and all these are for producing ethanol for automobiles. And so we are talking about enormous environmental loss. And I can't tell you exactly how much, but I can say that for every tank, I think for every tank of fuel with ethanol in it would be worth, I think, 1 or 2 acres of land. So but don't quote me in that. But the point to be made is, because there is an increasing demand for ethanol and for beef, the tropical rainforest is being very, very quickly denuded of trees. And another thing unfortunate about the tropical rainforest is that its soil is not very fertile. So after a few years, it would lose its fertility. And all in all, ethanol, I think, is the worst fuel. The tar sands second, and the general fossil fuels, oil.